I never imagined I'd have to defend my success to the people who should have been my biggest supporters. But there I was, standing in my own dining room on Thanksgiving Day, my voice shaking as I extended my hands across the table toward my brother-in-law, David. "Take a good look," I said, fighting to keep my composure. "This is what being lucky really looks like." The room fell silent. My sister Jennifer stared at her plate. My husband Paul reached for my shoulder in quiet support. And David? Well, David finally had the decency to look uncomfortable as he stared at my hands. Calloused, scarred, with permanently damaged nails and skin that would never again be smooth no matter how many expensive creams I applied. These hands had scrubbed thousands of toilets, stocked countless shelves, and processed mountains of paperwork during the 5 years I'd worked 3 jobs simultaneously just to keep our family afloat. These hands had comforted my crying children when they asked why Mommy was always leaving for work. These hands had built a business from nothing, turning desperation into determination hour by exhausting hour. And David had just reduced it all to luck. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Sarah Mitchell. 6 years ago, I was a 34-year-old mother of twin 8-year-old boys, Ryan and Tyler, and their little sister Mia, who had just turned 5. My husband Paul worked as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company in Minneapolis, making enough for us to live comfortably in our modest 3-bedroom home in the suburbs. I had a part-time job as an administrative assistant at a dental office, working while the kids were in school. We weren't wealthy, but we were stable. Paul's income covered our mortgage and bills, while mine provided extras like the kids' sports, activities, and our occasional family vacations. We'd built exactly the kind of life we wanted: predictable, secure, happy. I remember feeling so confident about our future that I'd started taking classes toward a business degree at the community college. 2 nights a week, Paul would handle dinner and bedtime while I attended evening classes, dreaming about eventually starting my own small business. That all changed on a frigid January morning when Paul called me from the emergency room. His voice sounded strange, tight with pain and something else I couldn't identify. "There's been an accident at the site," he said. A scaffold collapsed. "I'm okay, but..." He paused, taking a ragged breath. "Sarah, my back. They're saying I need surgery, and there might be permanent damage." I remember gripping the phone so hard my fingers went numb, standing frozen in our kitchen while the coffee maker beeped cheerfully in the background. The world can change completely between one heartbeat and the next. The doctors said Paul was lucky, that word again, that he hadn't been paralyzed. The falling scaffolding had fractured 2 vertebrae and damaged several discs. He would need immediate surgery, followed by months of physical therapy, with no guarantee he'd ever be able to return to construction work. Insurance covered the surgery, but only a fraction of his lost income. Short-term disability helped for the first 12 weeks, but at only 60% of his regular pay. After that, we faced a terrifying reality. Our primary income had vanished, with no clear timeline for when or if it would return. I withdrew from my classes immediately. My first practical step was asking for full-time hours at the dental office. Dr. Winters was sympathetic, but limited. She could only offer me 30 hours a week. It wasn't enough, not even close. That first night after calculating our new financial reality, I sat at our kitchen table surrounded by bills, our monthly budget, and the painfully inadequate numbers from my expanded dental office role. We were short by nearly $2,000 every month, with Paul's medical expenses creating an ever-growing hole. Our modest emergency fund would be depleted within weeks. Paul watched me from the doorway, leaning heavily on his walker. I hadn't heard him make his way down the hallway from our bedroom where he'd been resting since coming home from the hospital. "I could try to find something I can do from home," he offered, his face pale with pain just from the effort of standing. I shook my head. "Your job right now is to heal," I told him, forcing confidence into my voice. "I'll figure this out." Later that night, after helping Paul back to bed and checking on the sleeping children, I created a plan. Our biggest expenses were non-negotiable: mortgage, utilities, groceries, medical bills. I'd need to find additional work, not just a few extra hours, but a significant second income source. By morning, I had restructured our entire life on paper. I would keep my day job at the dental office, which provided some flexibility for Paul's medical appointments. For evenings and weekends, I'd find whatever work I could, preferably something with immediate hiring and flexible hours. The kids would need to adjust too. Ryan and Tyler would have to become more independent, helping with Mia and taking on more household responsibilities. Family dinners, homework help, bedtime stories, all the routines that had anchored our family life would need to change. I didn't cry that morning, though I wanted to. Instead, I made breakfast, explained to the children in age-appropriate terms that Daddy would need lots of rest to get better, and that I'd be working more hours for a while. Then I dressed in my most professional outfit and began my job hunt between patients at the dental office. By the end of that week, I had secured 2 additional positions: evening shifts at the customer service desk of a local supermarket and weekend work cleaning offices for a commercial cleaning company. Between all 3 jobs, I would be working nearly 80 hours a week. When I told my sister Jennifer about my plan, she immediately offered to take the kids 1 weekend a month to give me a break. She meant well, but her husband David's response still stings in my memory. "Wouldn't it be easier to just sell the house?" he suggested, his tone reasonable as we sat in their spacious kitchen that was 3 times the size of mine. "You could. Rent something smaller. Reduce your expenses instead of killing yourself working 3 jobs. Be practical, Sarah." What David didn't understand, what no one really understood unless they'd been in my position, was that keeping our home wasn't just about pride or stubbornness. It was about maintaining the one constant in our children's suddenly chaotic lives. With their father injured and their mother now rarely home, they needed the security of familiar surroundings, the comfort of their own beds, the stability of staying in their same school with their friends. "We'll make it work," I told him firmly, ending the conversation. My new life began the following Monday. I'd drop the kids at school at 7:30, work at the dental office from 8:00 to 3:30, pick up the kids and get them started on homework, prepare, a quick dinner, and then head to the supermarket for my 5 to 11 p.m. shift. I'd get home around 11:30, spend an hour catching up on household chores, fall into bed for 5 hours of sleep, then start again. Weekends meant commercial cleaning, emptying trash cans, vacuuming carpets, scrubbing bathrooms, and disinfecting surfaces in office buildings across the city. I'd leave home at 6 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, working 12-hour shifts with a team of other cleaners, most of whom spoke limited English, but showed me kindness through shared lunches and patient training. The physical demands of my new schedule hit immediately. By the end of the first week, I had developed blisters on my hands from the industrial cleaning products. By the end of the first month, those blisters had become calluses. I discovered muscles I never knew existed as they screamed in protest. Each morning, I learned to function on minimal sleep, becoming an expert at 5-minute power naps in my car between jobs. The emotional toll took longer to manifest, but cut deeper. Missing Tyler's school play, being too exhausted to help Ryan with his science project, falling asleep while reading bedtime stories to Mia. Each small absence felt like a failure, despite knowing that my work was precisely what kept our family functioning. Paul tried his best to compensate, helping the kids with homework from his recliner where he spent most days during his recovery. He managed simple meals on good days when the pain was tolerable. But his own struggles with chronic pain, medication side effects, and the psychological impact of his changed role in our family added another layer of complexity to our already precarious situation. 3 months into my 3-job existence, I had my first breakdown. It happened in the cleaning supply closet of an anonymous office building on a Sunday afternoon. I'd been on my feet for 7 hours straight, my back screaming in protest, hands raw despite the protective gloves. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Mom, when will you be home? Dad's having a really bad pain day." Something inside me simply cracked. I sat down on an overturned bucket and sobbed, ugly, gulping cries that I muffled with a handful of paper towels. I cried for my children growing up without my presence, for Paul suffering through recovery alone, for the simple pleasures of family life that had slipped away, and selfishly, for the loss of the woman I used to be, the one with interests and aspirations beyond mere survival. Maria, one of the older cleaning staff, found me there. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Without a word, she sat beside me on another bucket, her presence a quiet comfort. When my tears slowed, she patted my shoulder and said in her heavily accented English, "Is very hard, yes, but you are strong mother. Your family is lucky." I almost laughed at that word. Lucky. Nothing about our situation felt lucky. But Maria wasn't finished. "My hands," she continued, holding them out for me to see. They were like weathered leather, crossed with old scars and thickened skin. 20 years cleaning. Raised 5 children, all college now. Hands tell story of love. She stood, helped me to my feet, and handed me a fresh pair of gloves. "We finish now. Then you go home to family." That moment in the supply closet marked a turning point. Not because my circumstances changed, but because my perspective began to shift. Maria was right. My aching body and raw hands weren't just symbols of hardship. They were evidence of my commitment to keeping our family whole. I developed systems to maximize the precious little time I had at home. Sundays became meal prep days, with the kids helping me prepare large batches of food that could be easily reheated throughout the week. I taught Ryan and Tyler how to do their own laundry and assigned them responsibility for helping Mia with hers. We created a family calendar with color-coded schedules so everyone knew where everyone else was supposed to be. Paul focused everything on his recovery, diligently doing his physical therapy exercises and gradually taking on more household management. He became the homework supervisor, the appointment scheduler, the daytime parent who was present when I couldn't be. We functioned like a well-orchestrated team, each doing whatever they could to keep our family moving forward. The strain showed in other ways, though. I lost 15 pounds that first year from constant activity and meals eaten on the go. Gray streaked my hair seemingly overnight. The lines around my eyes deepened. My once manicured nails became permanently short and practical. Most noticeably, my hands transformed completely, developing calluses that would never fully fade, small cuts that left thin white scars, and a perpetual roughness that no amount of lotion could smooth away. If anyone asked how we were doing, teachers, neighbors, casual acquaintances, I'd smile and say, "We're getting by." It became my mantra, a phrase that acknowledged our struggles without inviting pity. We were getting by, one day at a time, one bill at a time, one exhausted step after another. What no one tells you about survival mode is how it narrows your vision. The future becomes an abstract concept when all your energy focuses on making it through the current day. Dreams and aspirations get shelved indefinitely. Friendships fade as social engagements become impossible luxuries. Your world contracts to the essential: work, family, sleep when possible, repeat. Yet within that narrowed existence, moments of unexpected grace appeared. The dental office patients who noticed my exhaustion and brought me coffee without being asked. the supermarket manager who scheduled me for the less physically demanding register shifts when he could, the cleaning crew who worked a little faster so I could leave early on my son's birthday, and my children, my remarkable children, who grew in resilience and compassion during those difficult years. I would find notes in my work bag. "You're the best mom ever," in Mia's crayon scrawl. Tyler would have a cup of tea waiting when I dragged myself home from late shifts. Ryan stepped up as his sister's protector at school when other kids made comments about their absent mom. By the end of that first year, we had settled into our new normal. We hadn't fallen behind on the mortgage. The medical bills were being paid, slowly but steadily. Paul had progressed to using a cane instead of a walker, though the doctors confirmed what we'd feared. His construction days were over. He would need to find an entirely new career path once his recovery plateaued. And I had developed a strange pride in my capacity for hard work, in the growing strength of my once soft hands. They had become badges of honor, these hands that kept our family housed and fed, that still found time to brush my daughter's hair and hold my husband close on, the rare nights I made it to bed before he fell asleep. What I didn't realize then was that those same hands would eventually build something beyond mere survival, something that would change our lives in ways I couldn't yet imagine, and later, become the silent evidence that would challenge my brother-in-law's casual dismissal of everything we'd overcome. I withdrew from my classes immediately. My first practical step was asking for full-time hours at the dental office. Dr. Winters was sympathetic but limited. She could only offer me 30 hours a week. It wasn't enough, not even close. That first night, after calculating our new financial reality, I sat at our kitchen table surrounded by bills, our monthly budget, and the painfully inadequate numbers from my expanded dental office role. We were short by nearly $2,000 every month, with Paul's medical expenses creating an ever-growing hole. Our modest emergency fund would be depleted within weeks. Paul watched me from the doorway, leaning heavily on his walker. I hadn't heard him make his way down the hallway from our bedroom where he'd been resting since coming home from the hospital. "I could try to find something I can do from home," he offered, his face pale with pain just from the effort of standing. I shook my head. "Your job right now is to heal," I told him, forcing confidence into my voice. "I'll figure this out." Later that night, after helping Paul back to bed and checking on the sleeping children, I created a plan. Our biggest expenses were non-negotiable: mortgage, utilities, groceries, medical bills. I'd need to find additional work, not just a few extra hours, but a significant second income source. By morning, I had restructured our entire life on paper. I would keep my day job at the dental office, which provided some flexibility for Paul's medical appointments. For evenings and weekends, I'd find whatever work I could, preferably something with immediate hiring and flexible hours. The kids would need to adjust too. Ryan and Tyler would have to become more independent, helping with Mia and taking on more household responsibilities. Family dinners, homework help, bedtime stories, all the routines that had anchored our family life would need to change. I didn't cry that morning, though I wanted to. Instead, I made breakfast, explained to the children in age-appropriate terms that Daddy would need lots of rest to get better, and that I'd be working more hours for a while. Then I dressed in my most professional outfit and began my job hunt between patients at the dental office. By the end of that week, I had secured 2 additional positions: evening shifts at the customer service desk of a local supermarket and weekend work cleaning offices for a commercial cleaning company. Between all 3 jobs, I would be working nearly 80 hours a week. When I told my sister Jennifer about my plan, she immediately offered to take the kids 1 weekend a month to give me a break. She meant well, but her husband David's response still stings in my memory. "Wouldn't it be easier to just sell the house?" he suggested, his tone reasonable as we sat in their spacious kitchen that was 3 times the size of mine. "You could rent something smaller, reduce your expenses instead of killing yourself working 3 jobs. Be practical, Sarah." What David didn't understand, what no one really understood unless they'd been in my position, was that keeping our home wasn't just about pride or stubbornness. It was about maintaining the one constant in our children's suddenly chaotic lives. With their father injured and their mother now rarely home, they needed the security of familiar surroundings, the comfort of their own beds, the stability of staying in their same school with their friends. "We'll make it work," I told him firmly, ending the conversation. My new life began the following Monday. I'd drop the kids at school at 7:30, work at the dental office from 8 to 3:30, pick up the kids and get them started on homework, prepare a quick dinner, and then head to the supermarket for my 5 to 11 p.m. shift. I'd get home around 11:30, spend an hour catching up on household chores, fall into bed for 5 hours of sleep, then start again. Weekends meant commercial cleaning, emptying trash cans, vacuuming carpets, scrubbing bathrooms, and disinfecting surfaces and office buildings across the city. I'd leave home at 6 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, working 12-hour shifts with a team of other cleaners, most of whom spoke limited English, but showed me kindness through shared lunches and patient training. The physical demands of my new schedule hit immediately. By the end of the first week, I had developed blisters on my hands from the industrial cleaning products. By the end of the first month, those blisters had become calluses. I discovered muscles I never knew existed as they screamed in protest each morning. I learned to function on minimal sleep, becoming an expert at 5-minute power naps in my car between jobs. The emotional toll took longer to manifest, but cut deeper. Missing Tyler's school play, being too exhausted to help Ryan with his science project, falling asleep while reading bedtime stories to Mia. Each small absence felt like a failure, despite knowing that my work was precisely what kept our family functioning. Paul tried his best to compensate, helping the kids with homework from his recliner where he spent most days during his recovery. He managed simple meals on good days when the pain was tolerable. But his own struggles with chronic pain, medication side effects, and the psychological impact of his changed role in our family added another layer of complexity to our already precarious situation. 3 months into my 3-job existence, I had my first breakdown. It happened in the cleaning supply closet of an anonymous office building on a Sunday afternoon. I'd been on my feet for 7 hours straight, my back screaming in protest, hands raw despite the protective gloves. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Mom, when will you be home? Dad's having a really bad pain day." Something inside me simply cracked. I sat down on an overturned bucket and sobbed, ugly, gulping cries that I muffled with a handful of paper towels. I cried for my children growing up without my presence, for Paul suffering through recovery alone, for the simple pleasures of family life that had slipped away, and selfishly, for the loss of the woman I used to be. The one with interests and aspirations beyond mere survival. Maria, one of the older cleaning staff, found me there. Without a word, she sat beside me on another bucket, her presence a quiet comfort. When my tears slowed, she patted my shoulder and said in her heavily accented English, "Is very hard, yes. But you are strong, Mother. Your family is lucky." I almost laughed at that word, lucky. Nothing about our situation felt lucky. But Maria wasn't finished. "My hands," she continued, holding them out for me to see. They were like weathered leather, crossed with old scars and thickened skin. 20 years cleaning, raised 5 children, all college now. Hands tell story of love. She stood, helped me to my feet, and handed me a fresh pair of gloves. "We finish now, then you go home to family." That moment in the supply closet marked a turning point, not because my circumstances changed, but because my perspective began to shift. Maria was right. My aching body and raw hands weren't just symbols of hardship. They were evidence of my commitment to keeping our family whole. I developed systems to maximize the precious little time I had at home. Sundays became meal prep. Days, with the kids helping me prepare large batches of food that could be easily reheated throughout the week. I taught Ryan and Tyler how to do their own laundry and assigned them responsibility for helping Mia with hers. We created a family calendar with color-coded schedules so everyone knew where everyone else was supposed to be. Paul focused everything on his recovery, diligently doing his physical therapy exercises, and gradually taking on more household management. He became the homework supervisor, the appointment scheduler, the daytime parent who was present when I couldn't be. We functioned like a well-orchestrated team, each doing whatever they could to keep our family moving forward. The strain showed in other ways, though. I lost 15 pounds that first year from constant activity and meals eaten on the go. Gray streaked my hair seemingly overnight. The lines around my eyes deepened. My once manicured nails became permanently short and practical. Most noticeably, my hands transformed completely, developing calluses that would never fully fade, small cuts that left thin white scars, and a perpetual roughness that no amount of lotion could smooth away. If anyone asked how we were doing, teachers, neighbors, casual acquaintances, I'd smile and say, "We're getting by." It became my mantra, a phrase that acknowledged our struggles without inviting pity. We were getting by, one day at a time, one bill at a time, one exhausted step after another. What no one tells you about survival mode is how it narrows your vision. The future becomes an abstract concept when all your energy focuses on making it through the current day. Dreams and aspirations get shelved indefinitely. Friendships fade as social engagements become impossible luxuries. Your world contracts to the essential. Work, family, sleep when possible, repeat. Yet within that narrowed existence, moments of unexpected grace appeared. The dental office patients who noticed my exhaustion and brought me coffee without being asked. The supermarket manager who scheduled me for the less physically demanding register shifts when he could. The cleaning crew who worked a little faster so I could leave early on my son's birthday. And my children, my remarkable children, who grew in resilience and compassion during those difficult years. I would find notes in my work bag. "You're the best mom ever," in Mia's crayon scrawl. Tyler would have a cup of tea waiting when I dragged myself home from late shifts. Ryan stepped up as his sister's protector at school when other kids made comments about their absent mom. By the end of that first year, we had settled into our new normal. We hadn't fallen behind on the mortgage. The medical bills were being paid, slowly but steadily. Paul had progressed to using a cane instead of a walker, though the doctors confirmed what we'd feared. His construction days were over. He would need to find an entirely new career path once his recovery plateaued. And I had developed a strange pride in my capacity for hard work, in the growing strength of my once soft hands. They had become badges of honor, these hands that kept our family housed and fed, that still found time to brush my daughter's hair and hold my husband close on the rare nights I made it to bed before he fell asleep. What I didn't realize then was that those same hands would eventually build something beyond mere survival, something that would change our lives in ways I couldn't yet imagine, and later become the silent evidence that would challenge my brother-in-law's casual dismissal of everything we'd overcome. It happened during the second year of our new life, when exhaustion had become my constant companion. I was restocking supplies in one of the dental examination rooms when Dr. Winters stepped in, closing the door behind her. "Sarah, are you all right?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "You've seemed especially tired this week." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, just a little under the weather." The truth was, I'd been fighting a low-grade fever for days, but couldn't afford to miss any of my jobs. Dr. Winters wasn't convinced. "You've been working yourself to death for over a year now. I'm worried about you." I started to offer my standard reassurance when she continued. "I had an interesting conversation with Dr. Peterson next door. He mentioned their office needs a complete overhaul of their sterilization and cleaning protocols. Apparently, their regular janitorial service doesn't understand the specific requirements for dental instruments. My attention sharpened despite my fatigue. Dr. Peterson ran the orthodontic practice in our medical building. He was complaining about how expensive medical-grade cleaning services are, she continued, and how he can't afford the big companies that specialize in healthcare facilities. Something clicked in my mind. Through my weekend cleaning job, I'd learned the basics of commercial cleaning, but I also had intimate knowledge of dental office requirements from my administrative job. I understood sterilization protocols, infection control standards, and the specific challenges of maintaining a medical environment. Would Dr. Peterson be interested in a consultation? I heard myself asking. I might have some ideas that could help him. Dr. Winters raised an eyebrow. I'll give him your number. That evening, instead of heading directly to my supermarket shift, I spent 30 minutes in my car researching specialized cleaning services for dental offices. What I discovered surprised me. There was a significant gap in the market. Large, healthcare cleaning companies charged premium rates that small practices couldn't afford, while regular commercial cleaning services lacked the specialized knowledge required. I sketched out a rough business plan while waiting for my register to open at the supermarket. What if I combined my knowledge of dental offices with my cleaning experience to offer specialized services specifically tailored for small healthcare practices? I could start with just a few hours on my only day off, targeting dental offices initially since I understood their needs best. When Dr. Peterson called the next day, I presented myself not as the administrative assistant from next door, but as a cleaning consultant with specialized knowledge of dental environments. We arranged to meet during my lunch break, where I outlined a customized cleaning protocol for his office that would meet all regulatory requirements while fitting his budget. This is exactly what I've been looking for, he said, reviewing my proposal. When can your team start? I hesitated. There was no team, just me, proposing to add yet another job to my impossible schedule. But something about this opportunity felt different. This wasn't just another job. It was the seed of something that could potentially grow. We can start next Wednesday, I said confidently, already mentally rearranging my schedule to create a 4-hour window on my only free evening. That night, I presented my idea to Paul, who was having one of his better days. It's a specialized service, I explained. One that could eventually, if it works, replace all 3 of my current jobs. Paul listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about liability insurance, equipment costs, and scalability. His project management background proved invaluable as we refined the concept together. This could work, Sarah, he said finally. And you know what? I could help with the administrative side. Scheduling, invoicing, supply ordering. I can manage that from home while continuing my physical therapy. For the first time in over a year, I felt a flicker of hope that extended beyond mere survival. This wasn't just about making it through another day or week or month. This was about potentially building something sustainable, something that could utilize our combined skills and accommodate Paul's physical limitations. I used a small portion of our tax refund to purchase specialized cleaning equipment and environmentally friendly medical-grade cleaning products. Paul created a simple website and business cards, listing our new venture as Precision Care Medical Cleaning Services. We were professional in every way we could afford to be, even as our operation consisted of just me cleaning and Paul handling paperwork from his recliner. Dr. Peterson's office became our first client. The work was physically demanding but satisfying in a way my other cleaning job wasn't. I knew exactly why each protocol mattered, understood the importance of proper disinfection of surfaces in treatment areas, recognized the specific challenges of maintaining sterilization rooms. Word spread quickly among the medical building tenants. Within a month, the dermatologist on the second floor had signed a contract. By the third month, we had 4 clients, all small healthcare practices struggling to find affordable, knowledgeable, cleaning services. I continued working all 3 jobs, using my only day off to clean medical offices while Paul managed the growing administrative demands of our small business. Every dollar of profit went back into equipment, insurance, and building a small financial cushion before I would allow myself to consider reducing my other work hours. The physical toll was tremendous. I developed tendinitis in both wrists from the repetitive cleaning motions. My back constantly ached. I lost another 5 pounds. But for the first time since Paul's accident, I could see a path forward. A future that wasn't just about enduring, but about building something meaningful. 6 months after cleaning our first medical office, we had grown to 8 regular clients. The business was generating enough reliable income that I could finally quit the commercial cleaning job, reclaiming my weekends to spend with my family and to focus on growing precision care. The children noticed the change immediately. That first Saturday morning when I didn't have to leave before dawn, Mia crawled into bed with me, her small hand patting my cheek in wonder. "You're still here, Mommy," she whispered, as if afraid speaking too loudly might make me disappear. We made pancakes together that morning, all 5 of us crowded in the kitchen. It was chaotic and messy and perfect. Paul was having a good day, steady enough on his feet to flip pancakes while leaning against the counter for support. The boys argued good-naturedly about who got to mix the batter. Mia spilled syrup everywhere, and I stood in the middle of it, all my hands, still rough, still calloused, holding a spatula instead of a mop for the first time in nearly 2 years on a Saturday morning. 3 months later, I reduced my supermarket hours to part-time. 6 months after that, I gave notice at the dental office, focusing entirely on precision care, which had grown to 15 regular clients and necessitated hiring our first 2 employees, both women I'd worked with on the commercial cleaning crew who were eager for better paying, more consistent work. Paul had found his new role as business manager deeply satisfying. His condition had stabilized. He would always have pain and mobility limitations, but he'd learned to manage them effectively. His organizational skills and attention to detail made him perfect for handling client relationships, employee scheduling, and financial planning. We moved our office from our dining room table to a small rented space in a strip mall. Nothing fancy, but a real legitimate business address. We invested in proper uniforms, better equipment, and comprehensive training materials that Paul developed based on my practical experience and healthcare knowledge. By the 3rd year after Paul's accident, Precision Care had 20 regular clients and 6 employees. We were still far from wealthy, but the constant fear of financial catastrophe had lifted. We could breathe again. I could be present for my children again. Paul had reclaimed his sense of purpose and contribution to our family's well-being. The day we paid off the last of Paul's medical bills, we splurged on a small cake and celebrated with the kids. It wasn't about having extra money. We immediately redirected those funds to rebuilding our depleted emergency savings, but about closing a chapter of our lives that had been defined by crisis. "We did it," Paul said that night after the kids were in bed, raising a glass of inexpensive champagne in a toast. I looked down at my hands wrapped around my own glass. They would never again look like they had before. The delicate, smooth hands of someone who worked in a climate-controlled office. They were workers' hands now, with permanent calluses and small scars that told the story of our family's journey. "We did," I agreed, clinking my glass against his. "But we're just getting started." The 4th year brought unexpected opportunities. One of our clients, a medium-sized medical clinic with 3 doctors, was acquired by Health First, a regional healthcare group that operated facilities throughout the state. We assumed we'd lose the account to whatever corporate cleaning service Health First used, a disappointing but inevitable outcome of our client's success. Instead, the office manager called me personally. "The new administration inspected our facility yesterday," she explained. "They were so impressed with our cleanliness standards that they want to know more about your company. Their regional director asked for a meeting." This wasn't supposed to happen. Small, local cleaning operations like ours didn't typically get opportunities with large healthcare corporations. Yet a week later, I found myself sitting across from Jonathan Reeves, Health First's regional operations director, in a conference room that felt intimidatingly formal. I'd spent hours preparing, polishing our service descriptions, pricing structures, and training protocols. Paul had helped me assemble a professional presentation with before and after photos of facilities we'd transformed, along with testimonials from current clients. I'd invested in a new blazer for the occasion, the first non-essential clothing purchase I'd made for myself in years. "Your reputation precedes you, Mrs. Mitchell," Jonathan said after introductions. "The Westlake Clinic has the highest cleanliness ratings in our recent acquisition group, and they credit your company entirely." I thanked him, trying to project confidence, despite feeling distinctly out of place in this corporate environment. "Here's my situation," he continued. "We have 13 facilities in the Minneapolis metro area, all currently serviced by a national cleaning company that costs us a fortune and delivers inconsistent results. I'm interested in exploring alternatives, but I have concerns about whether your operation could handle that volume." The opportunity was enormous, far larger than anything we'd anticipated at this stage. It would mean hiring many more employees, investing in additional equipment, and developing systems for managing multiple sites simultaneously. It was terrifying. It was exactly what we needed. "We would scale up specifically for Health First," I said, outlining how we would approach a phased implementation, training new staff using our established protocols, and maintaining quality control through regular inspections. I was making promises I wasn't entirely sure we could keep, but I was determined to find a way if given the chance. Jonathan asked pointed questions about our business structure, insurance coverage, employee screening, and regulatory compliance. I answered honestly, acknowledging our small size, but emphasizing our specialization and track record of excellence. "I'm going to be frank with you," he said as our meeting concluded. "You're not what our corporate office typically looks for in a vendor. But I'm tired of explaining to administration why we're paying premium rates for mediocre service from a preferred provider. I'd like to try something different." He proposed a pilot program, 3 facilities to start, with potential expansion if we met their standards. The contract would be worth more than all our current accounts combined. It was a life-changing opportunity, if we could rise to the challenge. I called Paul from the parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "They want us?" I said, my voice breaking. 3 facilities to start, possibility of 10 more if we perform well. That evening, our kitchen table became a war room as we mapped out exactly what we'd need to expand. How many additional employees, what equipment, what training resources, how much additional insurance coverage? Could we secure a business loan, if necessary? How quickly could we scale up operations? The questions were daunting, but for the first time in years, they were questions of opportunity rather than survival. We decided to be transparent with our current employees about the potential, growth, and its challenges. Maria, who had become our crew supervisor, summed up their collective response. "We build something good together. Now we build something bigger." The next month was a blur of activity. We secured a small business loan to cover the initial investment in equipment and additional staff. Paul developed enhanced training materials and created digital systems for quality control reporting. We hired 8 new employees, mostly referred by our existing staff, friends and family members who needed decent work and were willing to be trained to our exacting standards. When we signed the Health First contract, I insisted that Maria accompany me. She had been with us from the beginning, had seen me at my lowest point in that supply closet, and had become instrumental in maintaining our quality standards. This victory belonged to her as much as to us. The pilot program was scheduled to begin in 30 days. We spent that time in intensive preparation, training new staff, purchasing and organizing equipment, developing detailed cleaning protocols, specific to each facility's needs. I personally inspected every Health First location, noting challenges and opportunities, determining how to allocate staff most efficiently. The night before our first day servicing the Health First facilities, I barely slept. Despite all our preparation, the magnitude of what we'd undertaken hit me with full force. If we failed, we wouldn't just lose the new contract. Our reputation could be damaged beyond repair. Everything we'd built through years of sacrifice could collapse. Paul found me sitting at the kitchen table at 3 a.m., reviewing checklists I'd already memorized. He eased himself into the chair beside me, placing a mug of tea by my hand. "Remember when we thought keeping the house was our biggest challenge?" he said quietly. I smiled despite my anxiety. "Feels like a lifetime ago." "You've got this, Sarah," he said, covering my hand with his. "We've got this." The first month of the Health First contract tested us in ways we hadn't anticipated. Equipment malfunctions, staff illnesses, miscommunications about access codes. Each day brought new challenges that required immediate solutions. I spent more time in the field than I had in months, working alongside our teams to ensure every standard was met. The stress was different from our earlier years of crisis. This was the stress of growth, of stretching beyond our comfort zone. It was exhausting but exhilarating in its own way. When Jonathan conducted his first monthly inspection, I held my breath as he moved methodically through each facility, running gloved fingers along surfaces, checking corners and crevices, examining floors under equipment. His poker face revealed nothing until we reached the final site. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said formally, "I've inspected hundreds of medical facilities over my career. These are now the cleanest in our network." The pilot program expanded to 6 facilities after 3 months, then to all 13 by the end of the year. We hired 12 more employees, most referred through our existing team's networks, parents returning to the workforce, recent immigrants with limited English but strong work ethic, college students needing flexible hours. Paul, whose expertise in systems and management had become invaluable, suggested a structural change to accommodate our growth. "We need team leaders," he explained, "people who can supervise individual locations and report back to us. We can't be everywhere anymore." Maria became our first official operations manager, overseeing 3 team leaders who each managed multiple locations. We moved to a larger office space that included a training room where new employees could practice techniques before entering actual healthcare environments. For the first time, we paid ourselves regular salaries instead of taking whatever was left after expenses and employee wages. It wasn't extravagant, but it was reliable, a concept that still felt novel after years of financial uncertainty. The 5th year after Paul's accident, Precision Care had grown to 38 employees servicing 27 healthcare facilities throughout the metro area. We had expanded beyond dental practices to include medical clinics, outpatient surgery, centers, and physical therapy facilities. That spring, we received an unexpected call from a Minneapolis Star-Tribune business reporter working on a story about successful small businesses in the healthcare support sector. Would we be willing to be interviewed about our growth trajectory? The resulting article, "From Crisis to Cleaning Empire: How a Family Turned Misfortune into Opportunity," appeared in the Sunday business section, complete with photos of Paul and me in front of our office and quotes from Jonathan Reeves praising our company's exceptional standards. 2 significant developments followed that article. First, our phone began ringing with inquiries from potential clients who had read about our specialized services. Second, David and Jennifer called to invite us to Sunday dinner, a routine family gathering we'd been too busy to attend for months. The dinner invitation surprised me. While we'd maintained cordial relations with my sister and brother-in-law, our interactions had become increasingly limited as our lives diverged. David's career in financial services had continued its upward trajectory, affording them a lifestyle of country club memberships and European vacations that contrasted sharply with our years of struggle. "They probably read the article, Paul," suggested as we dressed for dinner that Sunday. Now that we're successful, they want to reconnect. I chose to be more charitable. Jennifer's still my sister. Maybe they're genuinely happy for us. The evening began pleasantly enough. Jennifer had prepared an elaborate meal, and the conversation flowed easily around updates on children and neighborhood news. David seemed particularly interested in precision care, asking detailed questions about our growth strategy and client acquisition methods. "I always knew you had it in you, Sarah," he said, as Jennifer served dessert. "You just needed to find the right opportunity." Something in his tone made me pause. The right opportunity? "Sure," he continued, oblivious to the shift in my demeanor. "Everyone needs a lucky break. Yours was finding that niche in medical cleaning. Smart move, being in the right place at the right time." Paul's hand found my knee under the table, a gentle pressure urging restraint. But 5 years of accumulated fatigue, sacrifice, and dismissal crystallized in that moment. "Luck?" I repeated, my voice carefully controlled. "You think what we built was about luck?" David raised his hands defensively. "Hey, I'm complimenting you. Not everyone recognizes an opportunity when they see one. You did, and it paid off. That's all I'm saying." "That's not all you're saying," I countered, feeling years of condescension and judgment bubbling to the surface. "You're suggesting that our success was some fortunate accident, not the result of working 3 jobs for years while barely seeing our children. Not the outcome of Paul completely reinventing his professional identity after losing his career. Not the product of thousands of hours of physical labor and sacrifice." The table fell silent. Jennifer looked uncomfortable, while David appeared genuinely confused by my reaction. "Sarah, I think you're misinterpreting," he began, but I wasn't finished. "Do you want to know what lucky looks like, David?" I extended my hands across the table, palms up. Even now, years after I'd stopped doing most of the physical cleaning myself, they bore the permanent marks of that period. Thickened skin, small scars from chemical burns and cuts, nails that would never again look elegant or feminine. This is what built our business, not luck, not being in the right place. These hands, working when they were so raw they bled, scrubbing toilets at midnight after already working 2 other jobs, learning specialized cleaning protocols while running on 4 hours of sleep. David stared at my hands, then at my face. For perhaps the first time, he seemed to actually see me, not as his wife's less successful sister who needed financial advice, but as someone who had fought her way through circumstances he had never faced. I didn't realize," he said, quietly. "The article didn't really talk about that part." "No," I agreed. "It didn't. Success stories rarely include the ugly middle parts. The moments when you're sobbing in a cleaning closet because you don't know how you can keep going, or when you miss your daughter's dance recital because you're working your 3rd shift of the day." Jennifer reached across the table and took one of my hands in hers, examining it closely, as if seeing it for the first time. "I knew you were working hard, but I didn't understand," she admitted. "You never really told us how bad it was." "Would you have wanted to hear it?" I asked, not unkindly. "At the time, you were renovating your kitchen and planning your trip to Italy. Our realities were completely different." The rest of the evening had a different quality, more subdued, but also more genuine. David asked thoughtful questions about the challenges we'd faced, listening with newfound respect as Paul described our gradual climb from crisis to stability to growth. As we prepared to leave, David pulled me aside. "I owe you an apology," he said with uncharacteristic humility. "I've been dismissive of what you and Paul built. It was easier to attribute your success to luck than to acknowledge how much you've overcome." His words didn't erase 5 years of judgment, but they opened a door to a more authentic relationship. one based on mutual respect rather than superficial family obligation. Driving home that night, Paul asked, "Feel better after getting that off your chest?" I smiled, feeling a lightness I hadn't expected. Actually, yes, though I think I shocked poor Jennifer with my outburst. It wasn't an outburst, Paul corrected. It was a long overdue education. The truth was, I hadn't recognized how much I needed to claim ownership of our journey, not just the successful outcome featured in a newspaper article, but the grueling process that had transformed both our circumstances and ourselves. My hands were physical proof of that transformation, a testimony that couldn't be dismissed or minimized. The 6-year anniversary of Paul's accident passed without the usual shadow of remembered trauma. Instead, we marked the date by signing a lease on a significantly larger headquarters facility that would include expanded training spaces, proper offices for our now substantial administrative staff, and a dedicated area for equipment maintenance. That same week, we received an email from a healthcare consulting firm in Chicago inquiring about potential expansion of our services to their client network in Illinois. The message had been forwarded by Jonathan Reeves, who added a personal note. These folks helped Health First streamline operations last year. They were impressed with our cleanliness metrics and wanted to know our secret. I told them it wasn't a secret, just an exceptional local company, worth exploring if you're considering regional growth. The inquiry sparked intense discussion between Paul and me. Expanding beyond Minnesota would fundamentally change our business model, requiring significant additional investment and creating management challenges we hadn't yet faced. Could we maintain our quality standards at such a distance? Would growth of that magnitude change the company culture we'd worked so hard to build? We should talk to Maria and the team leaders, Paul suggested. This isn't just our decision anymore. There are 43 families now depending on precision care for their livelihoods. The leadership meeting we convened revealed something unexpected. Our employees, many of whom had started with us during our earliest growth phase, were hungry for new challenges and opportunities. Several expressed interest in relocation if it meant advancement within the company. "My cousin in Chicago needs good job," Maria said practically. "Many families there would work hard like we do here. You teach them your way, just like you teach us." Her confidence was both touching and sobering. Our employees saw possibility where I saw risk, opportunity where I feared overextension. Perhaps they understood something I was still learning. That capacity for growth isn't fixed, but expands with each challenge successfully met. We decided to approach the Chicago expansion methodically, sending Maria and one of our most experienced team leaders for initial meetings with the consulting firm and potential clients. Paul developed comprehensive systems for remote training and quality control. I focused on establishing the legal and operational framework for an interstate business. The expansion would take months to implement, but the decision itself felt momentous, an intentional choice to grow rather than a desperate response to crisis. It reflected how far we had come from those early days of simply trying to keep our heads above water. One evening, as I reviewed Chicago facility specifications at our kitchen table, the same table where I'd once calculated how many jobs I would need to save our home, Ryan wandered in and sat across from me. At 16, he had Paul's height and my determination. He'd watched our family's transformation from financial disaster to stability to growing success, had lived through the years when his mother was an exhausted stranger and his father a man in constant pain. Now he was witnessing something different, parents engaged in building something meaningful, facing new challenges from a position of strength rather than desperation. "Mom, can I ask you something?" he said, fingering the edge of one of my facility maps. "Of course, sweetheart. How did you know you could do it? When Dad got hurt and everything fell apart, how did you know you wouldn't fail?" The question caught me off guard. The truth was, I hadn't known. There had been countless moments of doubt, Nights when I'd lain awake wondering if we were merely postponing inevitable financial collapse. Days when continuing felt impossible. I didn't know, I admitted. I was terrified most of the time. Ryan looked surprised. But you kept going anyway. I kept going anyway, I agreed. Sometimes that's all you can do. Take the next step without knowing where the path leads. He considered this, then asked, "Was it worth it? All those years when you were working? All the time and we hardly saw you?" The question pierced me. During our hardest years, I'd often wondered the same thing. Whether the cost of keeping our home and financial independence was too high when measured against the time lost with my children. I don't know if I made all the right choices, I said honestly. There were probably smarter ways to handle some things. But I do know that watching you and your siblings grow through that time, seeing how resilient and compassionate you became, that made every sacrifice worthwhile. Ryan nodded, absorbing this. Then he asked a question that would ultimately shape the next phase of our family's journey. Do you think I could learn the business? Not just for a summer job or whatever, but really learn it from the ground up? I looked at my son, no longer the frightened 8-year-old wondering if we would lose our home, but a young man seeing possibilities in what we'd built through years of hardship. Yes, I said, a new vision of the future suddenly unfolding before me. I think that would be a very good idea. The Chicago expansion transformed precision care in ways we hadn't fully anticipated. What began as a tentative exploration into a neighboring state quickly evolved into something more substantial when the healthcare consulting firm introduced us to 3 major medical groups actively seeking specialized cleaning services. I found myself traveling to Chicago twice monthly, staying in modest airport hotels and conducting meetings that would have seemed impossibly high-level just a year earlier. The contrast between my current reality and those desperate early days after Paul's accident sometimes felt surreal, as if I were temporarily occupying someone else's life. Maria proved invaluable during this transition. She had an innate ability to identify strong potential team members, often conducting initial interviews in Spanish with Chicago's large immigrant community. They remind me of me, she explained, when I asked about her recruitment approach. Hardworking, family-focused, needing good opportunity with respectful employer. We established a small office in a suburb northwest of Chicago, converting a former dental practice into a training facility and administrative headquarters. Paul designed comprehensive systems for remote management, allowing us to maintain quality control across locations. We promoted one of our most trusted Minnesota team leaders to regional manager, relocating her family with a housing allowance and salary increase that reflected her new responsibilities. By the 8th year after Paul's accident, Precision Care operated in 2 states with over 70 employees. The company that had begun as a desperate attempt to keep our family afloat had become a regional business with annual revenues exceeding $3 million. We had expanded beyond cleaning into complementary services, equipment sterilization training for healthcare staff, regulatory compliance consulting, and environmental safety assessments. Our financial situation had stabilized to a degree that once seemed impossible. We had fully repaid our business loans, established a proper emergency fund, and begun contributing to retirement accounts that had been emptied during our years of crisis. We even finally renovated our kitchen, a modest update but a symbolic milestone that represented how far we'd come. What hadn't changed were my hands. Though I rarely performed cleaning work myself anymore, focusing instead on client relationships and business development, my hands remained permanently altered by those years of labor. The scars had faded somewhat, but the thickened skin and altered nail beds were permanent reminders of our journey. Ryan's interest in the business continued to develop. Now 17, he spent summers and school breaks learning every aspect of operations, from basic cleaning techniques to inventory management to client communications. He showed particular aptitude for systems development, working alongside Paul to create more efficient protocols for new locations. "He has your drive and my analytical brain," Paul observed one evening after Ryan had presented a surprisingly sophisticated proposal for streamlining our supply chain. Scary combination. What touched me most was watching Ryan interact with our employees, particularly the newer team members still learning English or struggling to navigate American workplace norms. He showed a natural empathy that I suspected came from having witnessed our family's own period of vulnerability and recovery. The summer before Ryan's senior year of high school, we received an unexpected call from a national healthcare corporation interested in discussing potential acquisition of Precision Care. The proposal was flattering. They had heard about our reputation for exceptional quality and specialized knowledge, and were seeking to expand their auxiliary services division through strategic acquisitions of successful regional companies. The initial offer was substantial, enough money to secure our family's future and provide generous bonuses to key employees who had helped build the business. It was the kind of opportunity that would have seemed miraculous during those dark days when I worked 3 jobs just to keep our home. Paul and I spent several nights discussing the prospect, weighing financial security against the satisfaction of continuing to build something of our own. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Ryan overheard us debating the pros and cons. "You're not actually considering selling, are you?" he asked, incredulity evident in his voice. "After everything you went through to build this?" "It's complicated, sweetheart," I explained. "This kind of offer provides security. No matter what happens in the future, our family would be financially stable." Ryan shook his head stubbornly. "Precision Care isn't just about money. It's about everything you created. The jobs for people like Maria who might not get good opportunities elsewhere. The standards you set that actually keep patients safer. You can't just hand that over to some corporation that might not care about any of that." His passionate defense surprised me. I had always seen the business primarily as a means of supporting our family, a solution born of necessity rather than aspiration. Ryan saw something different, a meaningful enterprise with values and impact beyond its financial contributions. "I always assumed I'd take over someday," he continued, his voice quieter now. "Not right away, obviously. I need college first, and experience, but eventually. That's been my plan since I was 14. Paul and I exchanged glances, neither of us having realized how central the business had become to our son's vision of his future. What had begun as a stopgap measure during crisis had evolved into a family legacy in Ryan's eyes. We ultimately declined the acquisition offer, explaining to the corporate representatives that we were committed to remaining independent and family-operated. Instead, we began more intentional succession planning, discussing how Ryan might gradually take on greater responsibility after college if his interest persisted. The consequences of that decision revealed themselves gradually over the following months. Without the pressure of potential acquisition, we felt free to make longer-term investments in the business, expanding our training programs, developing proprietary cleaning products specifically formulated for healthcare environments, and exploring service territories in Wisconsin and Iowa. What we hadn't anticipated was how word of our declined acquisition offer would spread through industry channels, positioning Precision Care as a principled, quality-focused alternative to the large corporate services increasingly dominating the healthcare support sector. New client inquiries increased substantially, particularly from independent medical practices and smaller regional healthcare groups seeking partners who understood their specific needs. Our reputation for personalized service and specialized expertise, attributes that might have been diluted under corporate ownership, became our most valuable market differentiator. By the time Ryan graduated high school the following spring, Precision Care had expanded to 4 states with regional offices in Chicago, Milwaukee, and Des Moines. Our employee count exceeded 100, with a management structure that included several individuals who had started with us as hourly cleaning staff. Ryan's graduation party became an unexpectedly poignant milestone for our family. As relatives, and friends gathered in our backyard to celebrate, I found myself reflecting on how different this occasion might have been had we made different choices 9 years earlier. David and Jennifer arrived bearing an absurdly expensive gift, a laptop that cost more than we'd been able to spend on Tyler and Mia's birthdays combined during our hardest years. But there was less tension now between our families, a mutual respect that had gradually replaced the old patterns of judgment and defensiveness. "Quite a journey you've been on," David remarked as we stood watching Ryan open gifts. "From thinking you might lose everything to building all this." "It's still surreal sometimes," I admitted. "There are days I wake up and can't quite believe we made it through." David nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said that night at dinner, about your hands telling the real story. I've realized my own hands tell a very different story." He held them up briefly, smooth, manicured, bearing an expensive watch but no visible signs of physical labor or struggle. "Different paths," he said simply. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was an acknowledgement of something important, that success comes in various forms, through different types of work and sacrifice, and that no path is inherently more worthy of respect than another. Later that evening, after guests had departed and we were cleaning up the yard, Paul pulled me aside. "I have something for you," he said, handing me a small wrapped package. Inside was a framed photograph I'd never seen before, a close-up of my hands holding a cleaning cloth, taken during those early years when I was still doing most of the physical work myself. The image was striking in its rawness: chapped skin, short practical nails, a small healing cut across one knuckle. Yet there was undeniable strength in those hands, a capability that transcended conventional notions of feminine beauty. "When did you take this?" I asked, strangely moved by the image. "About 7 years ago," Paul said. "You were showing Ryan how to properly clean medical equipment. You were so focused on teaching him correctly that you didn't notice me with the camera." I studied the photograph, seeing it not just as a record of hardship, but as documentation of transformation, both of my physical self and of our family's circumstances. "I thought it belonged in your office," Paul continued. A reminder of where all this began. That fall, Ryan left for college with plans to double major in business administration and healthcare management. Though he'd been accepted to several prestigious universities, he chose the state school that offered the best value, stubbornly insisting on minimizing student loan debt despite our improved financial situation. "No point wasting money," he explained with the pragmatism of someone who had witnessed firsthand how quickly financial security could evaporate. "The degree's the same either way." With Ryan away at school and the twins busily engaged in high school activities, Paul and I found ourselves with unfamiliar pockets of time to assess both our business and personal priorities. Precision care had grown beyond our initial conceptualization, becoming a substantial regional operation that required increasingly sophisticated management structures. "We need to decide what we want this company to be 5 years from now," Paul said during one of our strategy sessions. "Are we aiming for continued expansion, diversification into new service areas, or should we focus on strengthening what we've already built?" The questions weren't merely academic. Several of our employees had been with us for years, developing specialized skills and leadership capabilities that deserved recognition and advancement opportunities. If we wanted to retain this talent, particularly as larger corporations continued to express acquisition interest, we needed a compelling vision for the company's future. After extensive discussion with our leadership team, we developed a 5-year strategic plan centered on controlled growth, employee development, and innovation in healthcare environmental services. Rather than expanding geographically, we would deepen our expertise and service offerings within our existing territories, positioning Precision Care as the premier specialized provider in our sector. Central to this plan was the creation of a comprehensive training academy that would standardize our methodologies while creating advancement pathways for employees at all levels. Maria, whose role had evolved from crew supervisor to operations, Director over the years, became the Academy's first executive director. "This is full circle for me," she told me when accepting the position. "When I found you crying in that supply closet years ago, I never imagined we would build something like this together." The training academy quickly became the heart of our evolving corporate culture. Beyond teaching technical cleaning skills, the program emphasized leadership development, English language proficiency, and basic healthcare knowledge, tools that enabled our employees to advance within precision care or pursue opportunities elsewhere in the healthcare sector. Several regional medical associations took notice of our approach, inviting us to participate in industry panels and professional development events. I found myself in the unexpected position of being considered a thought leader in healthcare environmental services, speaking at conferences where I shared not just technical expertise, but insights about building organizations that prioritized both excellence and human dignity. During one such conference in Denver, I was approached by a representative from a healthcare foundation interested in expanding workforce development programs for immigrant communities. "Your company's training model is exactly what we've been looking for," she explained. "Would you consider collaborating on a grant-funded initiative to replicate aspects of your program for broader community benefit?" The proposal led to our first nonprofit partnership, a 12-month pilot program that adapted our training methodologies for participants seeking healthcare support service careers. Precision Care provided curriculum development and instructor training, while the foundation handled recruitment and placement services for program graduates. To our surprise, the initiative generated significant positive publicity, attracting attention from healthcare administrators nationwide. What had begun as a community service project became an unexpected marketing advantage, distinguishing Precision Care from competitors and reinforcing our reputation as an organization with values beyond profit maximization. By the time Ryan completed his sophomore year of college, Precision Care had evolved into a respected industry presence with specialized divisions in cleaning services, training and certification, compliance consulting, and workforce development. Our employee count exceeded 200 across 4 states, with annual revenues approaching $8 million. That summer, Ryan joined us in a formal internship capacity, rotating through each division to gain comprehensive operational understanding. His natural leadership abilities had matured during his university experience, complemented by the technical knowledge from his coursework. Employees who had known him since childhood now regarded him as a capable young professional with valuable insights to contribute. "He's got the best of both of you," Maria observed one afternoon as we watched Ryan conduct a training session for new Chicago staff. "Your determination, Paul's systems thinking, and something else entirely his own." The something else became apparent when Ryan presented his internship project at the end of the summer, a comprehensive analysis of potential service diversification opportunities based on emerging healthcare industry trends. "The real growth potential isn't just in cleaning additional facilities," he explained to our executive team. "It's in expanding our expertise into adjacent service areas that healthcare providers increasingly outsource." His presentation outlined potential expansions into sterile processing department management, medical waste handling protocols, and specialized cleaning for emerging medical technologies, all areas requiring the specialized knowledge and rigorous standards we had developed in our core business. What struck me most was Ryan's emphasis on how these expansions would create advancement opportunities for existing employees while addressing genuine needs within the healthcare system. He had internalized not just our business model, but the values that had emerged through our company's evolution. "I didn't realize how much he was paying attention all these years," Paul remarked later. "Not just to what we did, but why we did it." As we prepared for Ryan's return to college, a letter arrived that would present yet another unexpected turning point in our journey. The envelope bore the letterhead of the National Healthcare Corporation that had attempted to acquire Precision Care 2 years earlier. My first assumption was that they were making another purchase offer, perhaps with more attractive terms. Instead, the letter contained a different type of proposal. The corporation had recently acquired a specialized medical device manufacturer, whose products required specific cleaning and maintenance protocols. They were seeking a qualified partner to develop standardized procedures and training programs for healthcare facilities using these devices nationwide. "This isn't an acquisition attempt," Paul noted as we reviewed the details. "It's a collaboration offer, one that could significantly expand our reach without requiring us to surrender control of our company." The proposal represented a fascinating evolution in our business model. Rather than selling our services directly to healthcare facilities, we would develop proprietary protocols and training systems that could be implemented at scale through the corporation's existing distribution channels. After extensive discussion with our leadership team and careful review of the terms, we decided to pursue the partnership. The initial contract would involve developing comprehensive cleaning and maintenance protocols for 3 specialized device categories, with potential expansion if the pilot proved successful. This new direction required us to establish a dedicated research and development division, something we had never anticipated when I was scrubbing floors in those early desperate years. We hired our first biomedical engineer and infection control specialist, creating a technical team that could translate complex medical requirements into practical protocols for frontline cleaning staff. The project launched just as Ryan began his junior year, creating periodic opportunities for him to contribute remotely to what was becoming our family's most ambitious business evolution yet. His academic knowledge proved surprisingly relevant to our developing protocols, particularly regarding regulatory compliance and implementation methodologies. That Thanksgiving, nearly 10 years after Paul's life-altering accident, our family gathered around a table that symbolized both continuity and transformation. It was still the same kitchen table where I had once calculated how many jobs I would need to save our home. But now it was surrounded by confident, purposeful individuals who had been shaped by our collective journey through hardship to unexpected success. Ryan returned from college with his girlfriend, a biomedical engineering student whose interests aligned remarkably well with our company's new technical direction. The twins, now high school juniors, had developed their own distinct paths, Tyler focusing on computer sciences, while Mia showed remarkable talent for communications and marketing, often providing unsolicited, but surprisingly insightful, feedback on Precision Care's promotional materials. Paul, whose physical limitations remained but had become familiar aspects of our life rather than defining crises, had found professional fulfillment in his role as the company's systems architect. His methodical approach to operations had created the infrastructure that enabled our growth from desperate survival measure to thriving enterprise. And I had evolved from an exhausted woman working 3 jobs into a business leader whose journey resonated with others facing their own versions of crisis and reinvention. The speaking invitations I now regularly received weren't just about cleaning protocols, but about resilience, adaptation, and finding opportunity within adversity. As we passed dishes around our Thanksgiving table, I caught sight of my hands, still, bearing the permanent marks of those years of labor, still different from what they had been before crisis transformed our lives. But I no longer saw them as damaged or diminished. They were evidence of a journey that had ultimately led us to something better than what we had lost. "I have a toast," Ryan announced, raising his glass. "To Mom and Dad, for showing us that it's not about what happens to you, but what you build from it that matters." As glasses clinked around the table, I exchanged a glance with Paul, a look that contained a decade of shared struggle, sacrifice, and ultimately, unexpected triumph. We had survived not just by enduring hardship, but by creating something meaningful. From it, a legacy that extended beyond financial recovery to encompass values, opportunities for others, and a family strengthened rather than broken by adversity. My hands might forever show the marks of that journey, but they had built something that would outlast the hardship that necessitated their transformation. And for that, I was genuinely, profoundly grateful. The 15th anniversary of Paul's accident arrived with little fanfare. just a quiet acknowledgement between us as we prepared for our day. What had once been a traumatic milestone had gradually transformed into a reference point, marking our journey's beginning, rather than a painful memory to be avoided. The watershed moment that had nearly destroyed our family had ultimately set us on a path neither of us could have imagined. Precision care had evolved into something far beyond its humble origins. With operations across 6 states, specialized divisions for training, consulting, and protocol development, and a workforce exceeding 300 employees, the company bore little resemblance to my desperate solo cleaning operation. We had recently completed construction on our own headquarters building, a modern 2-story facility with training labs, administrative offices, and research spaces for our expanding technical division. Ryan, now 27 and holding an MBA alongside his undergraduate degrees, had progressed through various operational roles to become our Chief Innovation Officer. His natural strategic thinking, combined with genuine compassion for our workforce, made him increasingly the public face of Precision Care's future. He had married his college girlfriend, Emma, whose biomedical engineering expertise had proven invaluable as we expanded our specialized protocol development services. The twins had followed their own paths, Tyler working in software development for a healthcare technology firm, while Mia had recently completed her marketing degree and joined Precision Care's communications department. At 24, they had no real memory of our family's desperate years, having been too young to fully comprehend the circumstances. They knew the story, of course, but in the abstract way one knows family histories without having emotionally experienced them. Our lives had stabilized in ways that once seemed impossible. We had finally sold our original family home, not out of financial necessity, but because it no longer suited our needs as empty nesters. Our new house was neither extravagant nor showy, but it was thoughtfully designed to accommodate Paul's continuing mobility limitations while providing comfortable space for visiting children and the grandchildren we hoped would eventually arrive. Financial security, once an all-consuming concern, had become a background reality rather than daily preoccupation. The company's sustained growth had allowed us to build substantial retirement savings, establish college funds for future grandchildren, and create an employee ownership program that ensured Precision Care's values would survive beyond our personal involvement. Yet despite all these outward markers of success, I remained most proud of less visible achievements. The career advancement program that had helped dozens of employees progress from entry-level cleaning positions to management roles. The scholarship foundation funded through company profits that supported education for employees' children. The training academy that had become a nationally recognized model for workforce development in healthcare support services. These initiatives reflected what I considered the true value of our journey. Not just personal recovery from crisis, but the creation of opportunities for others facing their own versions of struggle and uncertainty. On a crisp autumn morning, I received an unexpected email from the healthcare foundation we had partnered with years earlier for our first training initiative. The foundation's leadership team was nominating me for a regional humanitarian award, recognizing business leaders whose work created substantial community impact. They requested my presence at their annual benefit gala, where the award would be announced. My initial reaction was discomfort. I had never sought public recognition, and the notion of being celebrated for what had begun as desperate survival measures felt somehow inappropriate. When I mentioned the invitation to Paul, his response surprised me. "You should accept," he said without hesitation. "Not for yourself, but for what it represents." "What does it represent?" I asked, genuinely unsure. Paul smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. 15 years had transformed him too, hair now more gray than brown, movement still careful but less constrained by pain as newer treatment options had improved his mobility. "It represents validation of the choice we made to build something with purpose beyond profit. Not everyone takes that path, especially after experiencing the kind of financial insecurity we did." His perspective shifted my thinking. Perhaps the recognition wasn't about personal accolades, but about affirming the business model we had developed, one that demonstrated how commercial success and social impact could be integrated rather than oppositional. The gala was scheduled for early December, a black-tie affair at Minneapolis's most prestigious hotel. I purchased a simple evening dress, still feeling slightly uncomfortable with the formality, but recognizing the importance of respecting the occasion. Paul would accompany me, along with Ryan and Emma, while Maria would represent our employee leadership team. The evening of the event arrived with an unexpected snowstorm that transformed the city into a winter wonderland but complicated transportation. As our car navigated the slippery streets, I found myself growing increasingly nervous, not about potential recognition, but about the speech I might need to give. Public speaking had become a regular aspect of my professional life, but this felt different, more personal. The hotel ballroom was elegantly decorated, filled with the region's prominent business and civic leaders mingling over cocktails. I recognized several healthcare executives who had become precision care clients over the years, along with foundation representatives and community advocates. The gathering represented a world I had never imagined entering when I was working 3 jobs just to keep our family home. We were seated at a prominent table near the stage, joined by foundation board members and other honorees. Throughout dinner, various community initiatives were highlighted through video presentations and brief remarks. The foundation's work had expanded significantly since our initial partnership, now encompassing workforce development programs across multiple healthcare support sectors. As the program progressed toward the humanitarian award presentation, I felt Paul's hand find mine under the table, a gesture of support unchanged since those early days when we faced crisis together. The foundation's executive director approached the podium, explaining the award's significance in recognizing business leaders who created meaningful social impact through their commercial enterprises. This year's recipient began with a simple "dole," keeping her family afloat after her husband's devastating workplace accident, she explained as my photograph appeared on the large screens flanking the stage. What started as a desperate means of survival became a business model that has transformed opportunities for hundreds of individuals often overlooked in our economy. The brief video that followed included interviews with several precision care employees who had advanced from entry-level positions to significant leadership roles. Maria spoke eloquently about how the company's investment in employee development had changed not just her own trajectory, but those of her children, who had educational opportunities she had never imagined possible. When the video concluded, applause filled the room as I was invited to the stage. Walking toward the podium, I felt a complex mix of emotions: pride in what we had built, gratitude for those who had been part of the journey, and a lingering awareness of how close we had come to a completely different outcome. The Crystal Award felt substantial in my hands as I faced the audience, cameras capturing the moment for the foundation's promotional materials. I had prepared remarks, carefully typed on note cards in my purse, but looking out at the assembled guests, I decided on a different approach. Thank you for this recognition, which honors not just me but hundreds of individuals who have contributed to Precision Care's evolution, I began. I'm going to depart from conventional wisdom about acceptance speeches and show you something not typically displayed at formal galas. I set the award on the podium and held up my hands, palms outward, visible to the entire room. Though years had passed since I had personally performed intensive cleaning work, my hands still bore the permanent marks of that period, subtle but distinct differences in texture and appearance that told the story of our journey's difficult beginning. These hands built our company, I continued. Not through brilliant strategy or innovative business plans at first, but through thousands of hours of physical labor when there were no other options available. They scrubbed toilets at midnight, after already working 2 other jobs. They mixed cleaning solutions that damaged the skin but paid our mortgage. They wrote training protocols during stolen moments between shifts. The room had grown completely silent. the typical background murmur of formal events entirely absent as hundreds of elegantly dressed attendees focused on my work-marked hands. I show you these hands not to romanticize struggle, but to emphasize that success stories often sanitize the difficult middle parts. Before Precision Care became an award-winning enterprise with hundreds of employees, it was just me, working myself to exhaustion because my family needed to survive. I lowered my hands, reclaiming the award before continuing. The true value of our journey lies not in overcoming hardship. Many do that without recognition, but in the choices we made about what kind of company to build once basic survival was secured. We chose to create advancement pathways for employees facing their own versions of crisis. We chose to develop training methods that recognize the dignity and potential of workers often relegated to invisible, undervalued roles. We chose to measure success not just by profitability, but by the tangible impact on families like mine once was. As I concluded my remarks and returned to our table, the applause felt different from routine ceremony. There was a quality of genuine response that suggested the message had resonated beyond polite acknowledgement. Several attendees approached throughout the remainder of the evening, sharing their own stories of business journeys that had begun from necessity rather than opportunity. The evening's most meaningful moment, however, came from an unexpected source. As we prepared to leave, a young woman in hotel catering staff attire approached our table cautiously. "Excuse me, Mrs. Mitchell. I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I wanted to thank you for what you said about your hands," she said, her voice quiet but determined. "I'm working 3 jobs right now to put myself through nursing school. Sometimes I feel embarrassed by how rough my hands look compared to my classmates. Your speech meant a lot to me." Her comment affected me more deeply than the formal recognition had. "Never be embarrassed," I told her, briefly showing my palms again. "These are badges of determination, not things to hide. And they're temporary, just part of your journey, not your destination." We exchanged contact information, and I promised to connect her with our healthcare education support program, which might offer resources for her studies. As we walked away, Paul squeezed my arm gently. "That's the real legacy," he said, nodding toward the young woman who had returned to clearing tables. "Not the award or the company valuation, but moments like that." The exchange stayed with me during our drive home through the snowy streets, prompting reflection on how significantly our perspectives had transformed alongside our circumstances. In those desperate early years, success had meant simple survival. Keeping our home, paying medical bills, maintaining some semblance of stability for our children. Later, it had evolved to include business growth, financial security, and professional recognition. But the most meaningful measure of success had ultimately become our ability to create pathways for others still in their own difficult middle chapters. The young woman working multiple jobs while pursuing education represented what truly mattered about the company we had built: its capacity to recognize and support others traveling similar roads. The following morning, I arranged a meeting with our executive team to discuss expanding our education support initiatives to include partnerships with nursing programs, potentially creating a pipeline for employees interested in clinical healthcare. Careers. Ryan immediately grasped the strategic value alongside the social impact, noting how such programs could position Precision Care as a preferred employer while addressing critical nursing shortages. "This is exactly the kind of dual-purpose initiative that defines us," he said, already sketching implementation frameworks on the conference room whiteboard. "Serving business needs while creating genuine advancement opportunities." Watching my son's enthusiasm, his ability to see both practical and humanitarian dimensions simultaneously, I felt profound gratitude for how our family's crisis had shaped his perspective on business purpose. Ryan had absorbed not just management skills, but a fundamental understanding that commercial success and human dignity were complementary rather than competing priorities. That understanding became increasingly central to Precision Care's evolution. As healthcare systems nationwide faced intensifying pressures, staffing shortages, regulatory complexity, budget constraints amid rising costs. Under Ryan's growing influence, we positioned our company not merely as a service provider, but as a strategic partner helping clients navigate these multifaceted challenges. The approach proved remarkably effective. By our 16th year, we had expanded to 9 states with specialized divisions addressing distinct aspects of healthcare environmental management. Our technical research team had developed proprietary cleaning protocols for emerging medical technologies, establishing precision care as an industry thought leader invited to contribute to regulatory framework development. Yet, amid this continued growth and diversification, we maintained unwavering commitment to our core principles, particularly regarding employee development and advancement. Our workforce now included individuals from 27 countries speaking 34 languages, creating both challenges and remarkable strengths in organizational culture. To support this increasingly diverse team, we established comprehensive language programs, cultural integration resources, and mentoring systems that paired experienced employees with newcomers. What had begun organically with Maria guiding other Spanish-speaking team members years earlier had evolved into sophisticated talent development infrastructure, supporting hundreds of career progressions annually. The impact extended far beyond our company walls. Many former employees who had advanced through our training programs now occupied significant roles throughout the healthcare sector: administration, facilities management, compliance oversight, and technical specialization. Our alumni network had become a recognized talent pipeline for healthcare organizations seeking skilled professionals with practical expertise and management capabilities. Maria, whose own journey from cleaning supervisor to operations director had paralleled our company's evolution, often reminded me of a conversation we'd had in that supply closet years earlier. "You remember when I showed you my hands?" she asked during a leadership retreat celebrating her 20th anniversary with the company. "I told you they tell story of love for family. Now they tell story of building something important, just like yours." Her observation crystallized something essential about our shared experience: how what begins as necessity can transform into purpose, how struggle can forge capability, how work undertaken for survival can evolve into meaningful contribution. This perspective gained broader recognition as our company's story began appearing in business school case studies examining sustainable social enterprise models. Harvard Business Review published an analysis of our employee advancement framework, highlighting how our approach addressed critical workforce development challenges while enhancing operational performance and client satisfaction. I found myself increasingly invited to contribute to discussions about the future of work, particularly regarding roles traditionally categorized as unskilled labor, despite requiring significant competency development. My hands, still bearing the physical evidence of my own journey through these undervalued occupations, became powerful visual aids during these presentations, challenging audiences to reconsider fundamental assumptions about work, worth, and opportunity. The terminology itself reveals our biases, I explained during a healthcare policy symposium. We call certain roles unskilled, not because they require no skill, but because we've failed to recognize and value the capabilities they actually demand. This artificial distinction limits both individual advancement opportunities and organizational innovation. Such perspectives, once considered peripheral to mainstream business thinking, found increasing resonance as healthcare systems worldwide confronted complex workforce challenges that traditional approaches failed to address. Precision Care's model offered practical demonstrations of alternative frameworks that improved outcomes across multiple dimensions: clinical, operational, financial, and human. As my public role expanded, Paul's focus increasingly turned toward succession planning and organizational resilience. "We've built something substantial," he observed during one of our quarterly strategy sessions. "Now we need to ensure it outlasts us while preserving what makes it distinctive." The question of long-term leadership had natural answers in Ryan's growing executive capability and Mia's emerging expertise in communication and culture development. But sustaining our foundational values required structural support beyond family. Leadership, governance systems, incentive alignment, and institutional memory preservation. Working with specialized consultants, we developed a comprehensive transition framework designed to balance family involvement with professional management, preserving core principles while enabling continued innovation. The emerging structure included expanded employee ownership, formalized value commitments, and governance mechanisms ensuring mission alignment throughout organizational evolution. These preparations proved timely when an unexpected opportunity emerged through one of our healthcare system clients. The organization was launching an ambitious initiative to standardize environmental services across its nationwide network of facilities, hundreds of locations requiring coordinated protocols, training systems, and quality control mechanisms. The project's scale exceeded anything we had previously undertaken, potentially doubling our operational footprint while requiring significant capacity expansion. Implementation would demand substantial investment in technology, personnel development, and organizational infrastructure, commitments that carried both opportunity and risk. Our leadership team divided initially on whether to pursue the contract. Some expressed concern about rapid growth compromising quality standards and diluting our distinctive culture. Others emphasized the unprecedented opportunity to extend our impact throughout a major healthcare network, potentially establishing new industry benchmarks for environmental services integration. The discussion continued over several weeks, involving progressive levels of analysis and scenario planning. Throughout the process, I found myself listening more than speaking, observing how thoroughly our values had permeated leadership thinking at every level. The debate centered not on profit potential, but on capacity for quality maintenance, workforce development implications, and alignment with long-term strategic vision. Ryan ultimately presented the synthesis that unified our approach: a phased implementation framework with explicit quality thresholds governing expansion pacing, integrated feedback mechanisms ensuring rapid issue identification, and dedicated resources preserving cultural consistency across new operational territories. This isn't about growth for growth's sake, he emphasized during the final decision meeting. It's about extending a model that works for patients, for healthcare systems, and for employees seeking advancement pathways. If we maintain our fundamentals, scale becomes opportunity rather than threat. The proposal we submitted reflected this balanced perspective, ambitious in scope, but disciplined in execution planning, innovative in technical approach, but grounded in proven methodologies. When the healthcare system selected Precision Care as its implementation partner over several larger competitors, their decision specifically cited our distinctive integration of operational excellence with workforce development as decisive advantages. The project launch coincided with another significant milestone, the 20th anniversary of Precision Care's founding. While I had initially imagined marking the occasion with a celebratory event, the implementation demands of our new nationwide contract left little time for retrospective acknowledgement. Instead, the anniversary passed with minimal ceremony, a simple company-wide message expressing gratitude for collective contributions and briefly recounting our journey from crisis response to industry leadership. The lack of elaborate celebration seemed somehow appropriate, reflecting how thoroughly the company had transcended its origins to become something far beyond my personal story. Yet reminders of that personal journey remained embedded throughout our organization. The framed photograph of my work-worn hands still occupied a prominent place in my office, now paired with similar images of other hands representing our diverse workforce, a visual testimony to labor's dignity and transformation potential. Our headquarters building included a heritage wall documenting company evolution through stories and artifacts, including my original cleaning supplies and handwritten training notes from those early desperate days. These elements weren't maintained from mere sentimentality, but as intentional cultural anchors, reminders of foundational experiences that continued shaping organizational identity despite tremendous growth and evolution. They represented institutional memory preserving essential values through leadership transitions and market changes. As implementation of the nationwide contract progressed, these cultural foundations proved invaluable in maintaining consistency across rapidly expanding operations. New team members joining through this growth phase encountered not just technical protocols and operational procedures, but a cohesive narrative explaining why those elements mattered, connecting daily tasks to broader purpose and organizational heritage. The expansion brought expected challenges: recruitment pressures, training capacity constraints, communication complexities across diverse facilities. Yet these practical difficulties were consistently addressed through solutions reflecting our core principles rather than expedient compromises, reinforcing rather than diluting organizational identity through the growth process. 6 months into implementation, preliminary results exceeded projections across key metrics: infection control outcomes, regulatory compliance, cost management, and employee retention. The healthcare systems leadership team highlighted our integrated approach as particularly effective in addressing persistent operational challenges their previous standardization attempts had failed to resolve. This validation carried significance beyond mere contract performance. It demonstrated the scalability of principles we had developed through years of intentional evolution, showing how approaches born from personal crisis response could effectively address systemic healthcare challenges when properly adapted and implemented. During a site visit to one of the newly implemented facilities in Arizona, I experienced a moment that crystallized this connection between personal journey and broader impact. While observing our protocols in action, I encountered a team leader named Justina conducting new employee orientation. Though we had never previously met, she immediately recognized me from company materials. "The woman with the hands," she said, smiling, extending her own work-marked hands in greeting. "Your story inspired me when I started as a night cleaner 4 years ago. Now I train others." As she continued orientation with her team, I noticed how she incorporated our company's origin story into technical instruction, explaining not just how certain protocols worked, but why they mattered within broader healthcare contexts. The narrative had become a teaching tool, connecting detailed procedures to meaningful purpose and patient outcomes. Walking through the immaculate facility with its standardized stations and clearly documented protocols, I found myself reflecting on the distance between this sophisticated operation and my desperate late-night cleaning shifts 15 years earlier. The gulf seemed almost incomprehensible. From working 3 jobs to keep my family's home to overseeing a nationwide implementation, transforming environmental services for a major healthcare system. Yet continuity existed alongside transformation. The fundamental insights developed during those difficult years about workflow efficiency, about specialized knowledge requirements, about dignity in often overlooked roles, remained central to our expanded operations. What had changed was not the core understanding, but the scale of implementation and institutional capacity supporting it. That evening, dining with regional implementation leaders, I shared this observation. Everything we're doing nationally began with simple questions I faced personally. How to clean medical environments effectively with limited time, how to develop specialized knowledge while balancing multiple responsibilities, how to create advancement opportunities from entry-level positions. One of the younger managers looked surprised. I knew the company started small, but I didn't realize how directly our current systems connect to those early experiences. That's the point, I explained. Crisis clarifies essential requirements. When you're working 3 jobs to keep your family housed, you discover what truly matters and what's extraneous. Those insights become powerful organizational principles when properly systematized. As our nationwide implementation continued advancing, these connections between foundational experiences and scaled operations became increasingly apparent. Procedures developed initially from necessity had evolved into sophisticated systems, while preserving their essential efficacy. Training approaches designed originally for my own urgent skill development had matured into comprehensive advancement frameworks serving hundreds of employees. The company itself had transformed from survival mechanism to industry leader, yet remained fundamentally shaped by its origins. Like my hands, changed permanently by years of labor but stronger for that transformation, Precision Care had retained the imprint of its difficult beginning while evolving into something far beyond what necessity had initially demanded. On a quiet Sunday evening, 21 years after Paul's life-altering accident, we sat together on our back porch watching the sunset. Our lives had found a rhythm that once seemed impossibly distant, comfortable without extravagance, purposeful without desperation, balanced between continued contribution and well-earned rest. Ryan and Emma had recently announced their first pregnancy, bringing a new dimension of anticipation to our family's future. The twins had established their own independent paths while remaining connected to the company's mission in their respective fields. Precision Care continued its evolution under increasingly distributed leadership, with my own role focusing more on strategic vision than daily operations. "Did you ever imagine this outcome?" Paul asked, gesturing vaguely to encompass not just our home, but the life we had constructed from crisis. "Back when you were working those 3 jobs, did you see any of this as possible?" I considered the question seriously, remembering the bone-deep exhaustion of those years, the constant fear, the moments when continuing seemed impossible. "No," I admitted. "I wasn't thinking about building something significant. I was just trying to keep us from losing everything." Paul nodded, understanding completely. "That's what makes it remarkable. You weren't trying to create a corporate success story. You were just refusing to give up." His observation captured something essential about our journey: how purpose had emerged gradually from necessity, how values had crystallized through hardship, how determination focused initially on mere survival had eventually constructed something of lasting significance. I glanced down at my hands resting on the porch chair arms, still bearing the marks of those desperate years, still telling the story of transformation through labor and purpose. They had changed forever from what they once were, but that change had created capacity I would never otherwise have discovered. "I wouldn't wish that kind of struggle on anyone," I said quietly. "But I'm grateful for what it taught us, about ourselves, about what matters, about the kind of legacy worth building." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across our yard, I reflected on how thoroughly our understanding of success had evolved. What had once meant simply keeping our home now encompassed, creating opportunities for hundreds of others to secure their own. What had begun as desperate measures to survive a crisis had transformed into purposeful work, improving healthcare environments nationwide. My hands had built more than I ever imagined possible, not despite their transformation through hardship, but because of it. And when I had shown those hands that Thanksgiving Day years ago, challenging David's dismissal of our journey as mere luck, I had been claiming not just personal vindication, but an essential truth about meaningful accomplishment, that it grows most authentically from necessity, perseverance, and the willingness to be fundamentally changed by what we build. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.